carnage. After more than a week of relative silence, U.S. President Barack Obama voiced his concerns late Wednesday.
The suffering and bloodshed is outrageous, and it is unacceptable. So are threats and orders to shoot peaceful protesters and further punish the people of Libya. These actions violate international norms and every standard of common decency. This violence must stop.
U.S. presidents don't usually make such clear demands for fear that if they are ignored, they would have to act. So what is this president prepared to do?
I've also asked my administration to prepare the full range of options that we have to respond to this crisis. This includes those actions we may take and those we will coordinate with our allies and partners.
So far, he isn't giving much detail, but Obama is sending his Secretary of State to meet with allies at the Human Rights Council in Geneva next week.
While people are dying, the world's greatest power is preparing.
Still, the director of Human Rights Watch in D.C., Tom Malinowski, says the administration could be taking steps to send a message to the people around Muammar Gaddafi.
The U.S. could, for example, impose targeted sanctions on the Libyan government. It could block banks from conducting financial transactions.
Some have suggested a no-fly zone could be imposed. Pentagon officials say the U.S. has the assets in the area, but they are not currently preparing to take to the skies over Libya. The State Department says getting international approval to take that step would be difficult. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, let's get the views now of Youssef Bouandel, a professor of international affairs at Qatar University here in Doha. It does now seem to be that the international community, and especially the United States, there is momentum building to actually see this through, to get consensus and to move forward.
Well, I think this is the strongest message from Washington so far. And Barack Obama, it seems to me that he didn't miss his words when he said the full range of actions. So obviously he's prepared to do whatever it takes. This is a very strong message to Tripoli to stop the bloodshed and to Colonel Gaddafi's inner circle that what has been going on in Libya will not go unpunished.
How important was it for President Obama not to mention Gaddafi by name?
It is important, but it's implicit in his speech that he meant Gaddafi and his inner circle.
But of course, with the Americans on board, so to speak, we're now seeing much wider diplomatic efforts. Now we're seeing the Human Rights Council going to be consulted over the next few days. We have European interior ministers meeting in Brussels on Thursday. We expect a statement out of there. But also Italy very worried. If we just focus as one nation, they're worried about a humanitarian crisis. They're also confirming they think 1,000 dead.
Yes, and it was very telling that the Foreign Secretary of Italy came out with those strong statements. Barack Obama is showing leadership when he made that particular statement. Let's not forget that Libya is in the backyard of Europe. Whatever happens in Libya obviously will have implications on Europe, not necessarily just refugees, but the flow of oil too.
What do you make of this news that is trickling out? That certain areas of the country are now in the control of anti-government protesters, and that parts of the army or military are now siding with them?
Well, it's the only normal course of action, because this particular system in Tripoli is being rejected by the majority of the people in Libya, and the eastern part now is not under the control of Colonel Gaddafi, and it seems that more and more people are getting encouraged by these kind of signs, and they want to move on Tripoli to basically get rid of Muammar Gaddafi and his regime.
Well, we'll see what happens. Youssef Bouandel, thanks very much for joining us from Qatar University. Well, 3,000 Turkish citizens have returned home after escaping the violence in the country. They arrived at the Mediterranean port of Marmaris on 2 ships sent by the country to evacuate them. At least 5,000 Turks have now left Libya of the 25,000 that are believed to be in the country. More than 160, mostly Ukrainian nationals, have arrived in Kiev after being evacuated from Libya on a military transport plane. Some have been speaking about what they've seen in Tripoli. One doctor described how difficult it was treating the many wounded people.
Surgery lasted about 1 hour. All were gunshot wounds. As soon as the surgery room was cleaned, it received another patient. You can calculate how many people have been treated in 8 surgery rooms working non-stop. As soon as they finished with one wounded person, another came.
Foreign nationals have also been returning to Russia. Neve Barker met some of them who'd fled as they arrived in Moscow.
Touching down in Tripoli, a French military plane arrives to evacuate foreign citizens stranded in Libya. Several nations have organised emergency flights.
We're taking every action to get the remaining British nationals in Libya out of harm's way. We're greatly concerned about the loss of life in Libya and their government's failure to protect its own people. Indeed, the behaviour of their government in launching attacks on their own people.
Plane loads of passengers are now returning to cities across the continent. At Frankfurt Airport in Germany, evacuees expressed their relief at being out of Libya. With ordinary commercial flights hit by cancellations, many describe the scene at Tripoli's main airport as desperate.
Today in the airport was an absolute chaos. Many people from North Africa trying to leave and get home, thousands, and that was it.
For many, the island of Malta has become the nearest safe destination for those fleeing the violence. More than 500 Russians are also on their way home, many of them specialists working in the oil and construction industries. They bring with them eyewitness accounts of the turmoil.
At night, they would sometimes shoot a lot. We wanted to leave in the morning, but there was a huge crowd, so we flew out at night.
Like many Western powers, Russia has been keen to establish a foothold in Libya. But as the nation descends into chaos, the only option left is to flee. Neve Barker, AlJazeera, Moscow.
Well, to New Zealand now, where police are saying 98 people are known to have died after a powerful earthquake hit. And they say that there are grave concerns for more than 200 people who are still missing. Tanya Page reports.
Christchurch's iconic cathedral may now be a tomb for several people who it's believed were trapped inside. From the air, the wounds inflicted by Tuesday's earthquake run deep. With the arrival of hundreds of international rescue workers, this has become a huge operation, but the death toll is expected to rise.
Now we've got the capability of going out and doing searches in areas where there may still be people trapped that hitherto in smaller numbers that hitherto we haven't been able to address. So that's the first thing, and of course that will spread right across the city into the suburbs and areas such as that we haven't had the resources to do so far.
If you come into the suburbs, you realise just how widespread the damage is. This row of shops behind me survived September's earthquake, but now they've been ruined. And in a country where many people own small businesses, this sort of damage could ruin livelihoods. We found Lynn McKinney packing up her shop, but she's determined this won't be the end.
Definitely moving to new premises and, re-establishing my business. Got too much to lose. It's still a wonderful city. I know there's just absolute devastation in town.
The earthquake's effects were felt from coast to coast. 30 million tonnes of ice from the Tasman Glacier